drink's pretty good too. And all for 99 cents. And that's Cressman's Business tonight. I'm afraid the market is off awfully, so you probably will need a strong drink, a bit more than Arizona tea by the time we're finished. Whatever you're up to in the hours ahead, if you can, I hope it's profitable. The Lead.
A primetime opportunity to prove the threat to American democracy. The Lead starts right now. Tonight, new voices and new video. More than a year after we all saw the deadly Capitol riot playing out in real time, what we're learning about plans tonight to show the American people how individuals and groups plotted and schemed for months to overturn the will of voters and keep Donald Trump in power. Plus, the ramped up security plans after the FBI says an armed left-wing would-be assassin wanted to kill a Supreme Court justice. Also today, the alarming new study showing a risk to babies' brain development if their mothers had COVID while pregnant. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're just hours away from the first 2022 hearing from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack. In prime time this evening, the committee tells CNN, they will present findings that they say prove President Donald Trump was at the center of a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. This hearing, it's not just about the mob that stormed the Capitol that day. This hearing is about a months-long campaign to undermine democracy in the United States of America. A president and those around him desperate to hold on to power at any cost, even if it meant destroying the American experiment. Even a willingness to take away legal votes from American voters. This evening, we're expected to hear excerpts of tape testimony from some of Trump's closest supporters and possibly even his family members. We're also expecting to hear live testimony from a U.S. Capitol police officer who was severely injured fighting off the MAGA mob. Also testimony from a documentary filmmaker who was embedded with the far-right extremist group, the Proud Boys, members of which were indicted for seditious conspiracy earlier this week. You might also remember Trump during that one presidential debate telling the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. This hearing is only the first of three officially slated for this month, with others likely to be announced soon. It comes at a critical time. The former president, Donald Trump, is still spreading baseless lies about a so-called stolen election. He is still weighing another run for the White House, where he could very well employ these same anti-democracy tactics to secure a win. And many others pushing those same lies are currently running for House, Senate, and governorships this November. CNN congressional correspondent Ryan Nobles begins our coverage today with the committee's massive undertaking so far and the crucial question that they need to answer this evening.
It has been almost 18 months since rioters violently stormed the U.S. Capitol, breaking through windows, attacking law enforcement, and coming within seconds of members of Congress. And for more than 11 months, a group of 9 members of Congress have been investigating what led to that day, including former President Donald Trump's false claims the election was stolen.
We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it.
And Trump's inaction for more than 3 hours as the Capitol was under siege.
The idea that all of this was just a rowdy demonstration that spontaneously got a little bit out of control is absurd. You don't almost knock over the U.S. government by accident.
The January 6th House Select Committee has done most of its work out of the public eye, but there is still quite a bit that has come to light. They've interviewed more than 1,000 witnesses and collected more than 140,000 documents, like text messages to and from Trump's then Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, that he was sending leading up to the riot.
What people are going to understand about the Meadows text messages is how horrible they are.
CNN obtained Meadows' messages, including this lengthy text from Trump's son, Don Jr., from November 5th, before the election had even been called for Joe Biden, where he outlines how his father and his allies would try to prevent Joe Biden from taking office. Don Jr. telling Meadows, we have multiple paths, we control them all. Another part of the committee's aim to draw a straight line from the attempt to subvert the will of the voters to the riot on January 6th.
All of my colleagues, all of them knew that what happened on January 6th was an assault on our Constitution. They knew it at the time. Yet now they are defending the indefensible.
The committee has also interviewed Trump's immediate family, including Don Jr., his fiancée, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Trump's daughter, Ivanka, and her husband and former senior White House advisor, Jared Kushner. Some of that video could be played tonight. Other Trump associates stonewalled the committee, leading to criminal indictments for some. What lingers over the hearings is whether the committee has uncovered enough to expose Trump's role on that day.
What was the president's role? We know some of the things about what the president did, certainly in propagating the big lie before that day and what he did at the rally that day. But what was going on at the White House?
And if the information could lead to Attorney General Merrick Garland to prosecute those responsible for attempting to undermine the election and inciting the mob, a task that may be their biggest challenge.
And so the big question is, what will we learn that is new tonight? Obviously, there's going to be new video we haven't seen before, new testimony that we haven't heard before, but the committee seems to be indicating that they are prepared to lay out their central thesis that Donald Trump is specifically responsible for a conspiracy to undermine the election results and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Today is just the first stage of that argument, a process that will continue throughout the months of June. And Jake, it won't end until they issue their final report this fall.
All right, Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much. President Biden just spoke about tonight's hearing from the January 6th committee. Let's bring in CNN's Caitlin Collins, who's traveling with President Biden in Los Angeles. Caitlin, what did the president have to say?
Jake, the president said he thinks people are going to learn a lot about what happened on January 6th as they watch this first primetime hearing on what unfolded that day inside the halls of the Capitol, but also, as Ryan noted, what happened leading up to it. And the president said that there are major questions unanswered that he thinks people will be looking for the answers to.
I think it was a clear, flagrant violation of the Constitution. I think these guys and women broke the law, tried to turn around the result of an election. And there's a lot of questions, who's responsible, who's involved. I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but I just want you to know that we're going to probably be, a lot of Americans are going to be seeing for the first time some of the detail.
Notable, Jake, that he said he is not going to make a judgment about who is responsible, but this is something that is coming up in conversations with world leaders. He was sitting there with the Canadian Prime Minister. This is something he said he believes a lot of Americans are going to be preoccupied with. We should note he's got an upcoming meeting with the president of Brazil, who Jake, of course, has cast doubt on President Biden's election, saying that he believes it was a suspicious win, which, of course, it was not, Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thank you so much. With me to discuss, CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, who's broken numerous developments concerning the committee's findings so far. Also with us, George Conway. He's a conservative lawyer and a contributing columnist for The Washington Post. Thanks, one and all, for being here. Jamie, let me start with you. In a preview of the hearing, a committee aide said the American people will see, quote, new evidence and will be shown, quote, unseen material related to January 6th. We've been covering the insurrection for a long time. Is there really a lot we haven't seen or reported on?
There are things even you and I have not seen. Imagine tonight, as a prosecutor, opening arguments to a jury. They're going to lay out not just what we're going to hear tonight, but throughout the hearings. And there are going to be witnesses we have never heard from before. We're expected to hear from Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, possibly Jared Kushner, maybe Donald Trump Jr. But we're also going to hear for the first time from former White House officials, former administration officials. I believe we will hear from former Attorney General Bill Barr, who, as you know, played a critical role because on December 1st, he said to then President Trump, there was no significant election fraud.
Right.
And that is key because once again, it goes to the committee's argument that he continued down a path where he was repeatedly told there was no fraud, and he was repeatedly told what he was doing could end in violence.
So Peter Baker and Susan Glasser had a piece in the Times the other day in which they talked about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump trying to kind of chart their own path and heroically not supporting the president's lies and his deranged ranting about the election. Do you think it would have any impact if, and I have no idea what they're going to show tonight, whether they're going to show the Ivanka Trump video or Jared Kushner video or whatever, but if there's video of Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump saying, no, there was no fraud, there was no widespread fraud, I told my dad it's not true, blah, 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 would that have an impact?
Well, I hope it does, because I think it's going to be visually arresting to actually see these words come out of these people's mouths. On the other hand, I don't think we actually need a new smoking gun to show that there was a widespread conspiracy led by a president of the United States to overturn American democracy. The evidence that we've seen, that has been dribbled out over the last 17 months is pretty substantial as it is, and all I think the committee really needs to do is to lay it out in an orderly and compelling fashion. We don't need a smoking gun. We've already got, a battlefield's worth of artillery, smoking artillery, and I hope that's what they lay out. They lay out more of the detail that we haven't seen.
Jamie, former Trump cabinet member Betsy DeVos, the former Secretary of Education, she spoke out today about January 6th, and she talked about on that day maybe invoking the 25th Amendment. The cabinet votes to remove a president because he's not well, one way or another, in an interview with USA Today. Take a listen.
I felt that there were things that the president could have done to stop the activity, to turn it back, to avoid all of the things that ensued, and it was just a bridge too far. I had conversations with a number of my colleagues, and then importantly, I also spoke with the vice president, and he made clear to me that that was not a direction that he was going to move in.
This is the first time we have heard from a member of the cabinet at that time about it possibly invoking the 25th Amendment, even though they ultimately didn't do it.
Correct. We've heard this on background, but this is the first time we are hearing on the record a member of the cabinet confirming that these discussions went on.
And again, a super Trump supporter, a very conservative Republican. Her bona fides in the MAGA movement until today probably are unquestioned.
Correct. And she also said something in the interview that will be key to the committee. She said, when I saw what was happening on January 6th and didn't see the president step in and do what he could have done to turn it back or slow it down, it was obvious to me I couldn't continue, and she resigns. Again, the committee is focused on not only what Donald Trump did leading up to January 6th, but what he did not do.
He didn't stop it.
Correct.
It's not just Trump, of course. We're getting new audio recordings of others, including House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy in the days after the January 6th attack. This is new. Let's take a listen.
We cannot just sweep this under the rug. We need to know why it happened, who did it, and people need to be held accountable for it. And I'm committed to make sure that happens.
Right now, he's really only committed to sweeping it under the rug. After this tape came out, Eric Erickson, again, very conservative, a radio host, he tweeted, Kevin McCarthy wanted to investigate January 6th before he didn't. The man has no principle or spine, and the GOP should not trust him with further leadership. What do you think?
They shouldn't. And he's been cowed. And the fact of the matter is, any normal reaction from that day, 187 minutes when President Trump did absolutely nothing to tell these people to go home, was shocking. And that's why people were talking about the 25th Amendment that day, even though they'd been previously talked about it basically from the beginning of the administration. They were talking about it that day because he was really, he's there watching television apparently and gleefully. He wanted this to happen. And the irony about that, Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th insofar as he followed his constitutional duty when it came to the electoral vote count. But he should have stood up under the 25th Amendment, and they should have found Trump unfit for office. In fact, it would have been the easiest way to protect the country at that point of time, because the way that Section 4 of the 25th Amendment works is that if the cabinet and the vice president certified the president's unfit, the president can contest that, but the vice president is acting president until Congress acts, and Congress had 21 days to act.
Yeah.
And it would have run out the clock on the administration, and we wouldn't have had the problem of a madman still with the control of nuclear weapons in the White House.
And possibly coming back to the White House and winning the election by hook or by crook, or completely legally. We'll see. Jamie Gangel, George Conway, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it. Tonight's hearing could also be revealing for people who were at the Capitol when that mob arrived. I'm going to ask an officer who was brutally attacked on January 6th what he wants to hear tonight. And the PGA Tour takes action and suspends 17 golfers participating in a tournament backed by Saudi Arabia. But do the reasons for the suspensions, do they go far enough? Stay with us.
Culinary Journeys. Meet Japan's Natsuko Shoji, a chef earning rave reviews. Inspired by art, she is a rising star in French cuisine and in an industry where men dominate. See how she overcame life's challenges despite the odds and is now paving the way for a new generation. Culinary Journeys, Sunday on CNN, in association with Ajinomoto.
5 years ago, and we decided that we wanted to have a Freshman Academy community service project, and we decided part of that was going to be working with spreading awareness of modern day slavery.
At the end of your presentation, you need to tell me how that issue connects to your poem.
There's probably 300, 400 kids in the Freshman Academy. We had all of their core teachers make sure on My Freedom Day that they were teaching about that topic. And now we've got not just our core classes doing it, but also our elective classes.
Okay guys, so this is what we're going to do today as far as packing. You are going to grab a Ziploc bag, and then you are going to start here.
So when we first started this was exclusively for the freshman class, but it was such a hit with all of the classes that every year we've grown and added the classes in, so now it's a school-wide event.
And who are you helping?
So we have two groups, and both of those organizations work towards ending human trafficking or helping those that are in need. It's been amazing because our students have really embraced the idea of learning about modern slavery and embraced the idea of what is human trafficking, how it has impacted them, and it's been a very popular topic to learn about and to participate in.
COVID was something from the movies. Asia was much more draconian with it. And so, we hardly did any flying for 2 years. So imagine an airline with 21,000 staff, 250 aircraft at that time. It's a nightmare scenario, but I think the worst is over now. And it's given us a chance to do things we probably couldn't have done before. COVID, one of the benefits was enabling me to pivot the ship and start looking at our data and our brand in a different way. The internet has made pricing transparent, so anyone is not going to come directly to AirAsia. They're going to search around, Google Travel, whatever. So I said to our team, let's be a travel agent. So separated the company, created the super app, and I'm aiming to be Expedia.
Back with our politics lead, the chairman of the House Select Committee investigating January 6th is revealing new details about what we should all expect during tonight's primetime hearing. Democratic Chairman Benny Thompson says viewers will see, quote, significant video testimony from individuals who have been charged, convicted, and or pleaded guilty to crimes on January 6th. Let's bring in former D.C. police officer and CNN law enforcement analyst Michael Fanone. He, of course, was helping to defend the Capitol on January 6th and was viciously attacked by members of the mob. Thanks so much for being here. We always appreciate it. What's the number one question you would like to hear answered this evening?
Well, as a police officer, one of many that fought at the Capitol on January 6th, I want to know what the hell Donald Trump was doing for 187 minutes while myself and hundreds of others, other police officers, were fighting for their lives.
Do you think if he had issued a video statement then as opposed to much, much later? And if he had issued a strong video statement, that could have really made a change?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the video statement that he put out. I've seen it numerous times. At best, I think it was disingenuous. I think he should have been doing everything that he could have possibly done to end that violent insurrection at the Capitol.
The committee is going to call Capitol Police Officer Carolyn Edwards to testify this evening. She was injured that day in a fight involving members of the Proud Boys. What do you make of their decision to use an officer as one of their first witnesses?
I think it's important. First of all, I commend Carolyn Edwards for coming forward. I know how difficult that is firsthand.
Because you get a lot of heat for it, a lot of attacks, social media and elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my advice to her. Tell the truth and stay the hell off of social media. But
yeah.
No, I think it's very important for the American people to see the violence of that day. It's been a long time since January 6, 2021. This is kind of, courtroom tactics 101. A prosecutor's going to bring you back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah. The House Republican leadership, McCarthy and Scalise and the rest, have been trying to make the argument that this is just political, this is just Nancy Pelosi trying to go after her opponents. I want you to listen to a comment McCarthy said today about who's responsible for the attack on the Capitol on January 6th.
You said both publicly and privately after January 6th that you thought Trump bore some responsibility for the attack. Do you still feel like he was in any way responsible for January 6th?
Look, I've answered that many times. I thought everybody in the country bared some responsibility based upon what has been going on, the riots on the streets, the others.
Everyone in the country bared responsibility for January 6th. What do you make of that?
Listen, I mean, we can go into the weeds about, our the state of affairs in the United States and the culture that we've cultivated here. But ultimately, what he said on January 11th was accurate. The President of the United States bore responsibility for what happened on January 6th. Saying that is, I think, just a way to avoid the reality of his party's responsibility in those events.
You said you think that former President Trump will get off the hook and emerge unscathed, even though you obviously hold him responsible for, at least partly, for what happened on January 6th. Is there any part of you that thinks these hearings are an exercise in futility?
I'm not going to say that it's an exercise in futility. I mean, it's important that the record, somebody makes the record, keeps it straight. Somebody assembles the information. We hear from witnesses. I guess if for nothing else, just the historical record. As far as whether or not it moves the needle, I just don't see that happening.
All right, Officer Michael Fanone, I will be talking to you a little later on in our coverage. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. And you can join me in just a few hours for the Attack on Democracy, the January 6 hearings. Our special coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern right here on CNN. Coming up next, security stepped up ahead of controversial decisions expected by the U.S. Supreme Court and a threat to kill one of the 9 justices. Stay with us.
Culinary Journeys in association with Ajinomoto.
March 29th, 2022, Tokyo. This is the annual gathering of the best 50 restaurants in Asia. On this night, Natsuko Shoji is taking home the title of Asia's best female chef. Ete was also chosen as one of Asia's top 50 restaurants.
People often say to me, why do you want awards? Or isn't it enough if your customers are satisfied? Of course, that is important, but I believe that an award is a passport to the world, something that will allow me to create change in the future. My goal is to win the world's best female chef award one day.
–
pandemic reminded us of how important diet is to health. That's why the Ajinomoto Group is committed to solving health issues around the world at the dinner table. A real solution means never settling for less.
ถึงแม้ว่าจะต้องลดความเค็มในอาหารลงแต่เราก็ต้องไม่ละทิ้งความอร่อยเราต้องการให้ทุกท่านได้เพลิดเพลินกับรสชาติความอร่อยของอาหารไปพร้อมกับสุขภาพที่ดี
A saúde é importante, mas queremos considerar também o legado do sabor regional. Como podemos melhorar o balanço nutricional, mantendo o respeito à cultura gastronômica? Esse é o nosso desafio.
Tempat yang jauh pun bukan masalah. Kami selalu bisa menyediakannya. Kami terus mengupayakan dunia di mana siapapun bisa mengakses makanan bergizi dimanapun mereka berada.
We're here to provide nutritious meals to the entire world without compromising on taste, local ways of life, or accessibility, because that is nutrition without compromise.
Eat well, live well.
I'm Hadas Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
It's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
End of 2021, we had almost 7.28 million tourists that came into Dubai. Not big numbers compared to before, but very big considering the circumstances globally. Then you look at the first quarter of this year, where Expo, of course, was tail-ending the second half of Expo. We had close to 4 million visitors that came in Q1. That's amazing.
You're not back at pre-COVID levels then?
Not yet,
Not
but the
yet.
spirit is there. For us, as Dubai, the appetite was always to go back to pre-COVID as much as we could. So it's great the fact that the private and public sector relationship is so strong that whatever we do it together. I always talk about Dubai being almost like a board, where even the private sector have a say, and they're heard, and then things are implemented. So it's not just one person decides everything else. That's the difference about Dubai.
I'm Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
The House of Representatives will vote next week on a Senate-passed bill to provide enhanced security to Supreme Court justices and their families. The legislation passed the Senate by unanimous consent last month before it stalled in the House, angering some lawmakers, including Senator Mitch McConnell, who slammed House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for slow-walking its passage. His ire even more forceful yesterday in the wake of the arrest of an armed left-wing would-be assassin near the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Authorities say the suspect traveled from California to kill the justice. As CNN's Whitney Wild reports for us now, law enforcement in Washington are gearing up for a potentially volatile next few weeks when major Supreme Court decisions are expected on abortion and on guns.
Police searching the home of a California man charged with attempted murder after he told police he wanted to kill a Supreme Court justice and then kill himself, he said, to give his life purpose. Upset over the leak of a draft ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and the possibility that the court could loosen gun laws, authorities say 26-year-old Nicholas Roski went to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home with a gun, zip ties, and other tools. But after seeing 2 deputy U.S. Marshals outside, he called 911 on himself.
Units be advised for Thornapple. The caller came to kill Supreme Court Justice Rex Kavanaugh. Came from California. He took a taxi from the airport to this location.
Attorney General Merrick Garland says the Justice Department will not tolerate this behavior.
Threats of violence and actual violence against the justices, of course, strike at the heart of our democracy.
Senate Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin says Congress is now ready to approve a bill extending security to the immediate family members of the justices.
What happened this week with Justice Kavanaugh is a reminder that we live in a dangerous place, and these people are vulnerable, and we should protect them.
Republicans are blasting the delay.
A disgraceful dereliction of duty.
House Democrats want to expand the Senate bill to cover clerks and staff. Speaker Nancy Pelosi promises action soon.
We had hoped that we could do it today, but we certainly will do it at the beginning of next week.
All this coming as the January 6th hearings are set to begin tonight in prime time, and Washington gears up for a potentially volatile June.
Our blood, your hands, our...
That's when major Supreme Court decisions, large-scale protests, and more tours at the Capitol will converge in an already heightened threat environment.
There's, I think, a lot of vitriol.
No justice, no peace!
A major concern, the pending abortion ruling. Intelligence analysts warn of potential threats toward lawmakers, Supreme Court justices, abortion providers, and religious groups. The threats coming from both sides of the abortion debate.
I am worried about the violence. I'm worried about the lone actor coming in and doing something dangerous.
We will not go back!
Protests related to abortion and gun laws could bring thousands of people to Washington. Sources say Capitol Police are now adding overtime shifts.
The focus is really on what the protests that are going on at the court, the protests that are going on at the homes of the justices. I understand that the attention could very quickly turn to, to the Capitol.
Jake, just minutes ago, we got that 911 call that suspect made to 911 when he admitted that he had weapons and that he had planned to hurt that justice and himself. Jake.
Whitney Wild, thanks so much. Appreciate it. From the rise in gas prices to the falls in the housing market, what a series of new economic numbers might mean for your money and the future of the American economy. Stay with us.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
My name's Jim Brailsford, and I lead the Industry and Solutions Marketing team for Kinaxis. It's absolutely key that businesses incorporate sustainability into their business models. Firstly, you have got the corporate objective and being a good global citizen. You've also got the need to be reflecting that to your public, to your consumers, that show that you are actually being environmentally conscious. And also, as supply chains are more mature and are considering all of these things in a holistic way, it develops a sort of a steadiness to their operation. Supply chain sustainability will become a qualifier. It will not necessarily be the winner, but it will become a qualifier enabling you to participate in the competition.
For World Sport.
World Sport. For World Sport, I'm Coy Wyatt.
I'm Amanda Davis.
I'm Andy Scholes.
I'm Don Riddell.
I'm Alex Thomas. I'm Patrick Snell. And this
is CNN.
Regenerative gastronomy is meant to transform. It's meant to heal. It's more about getting to know the cycle of life. We directly connect the guest with the heart of nature. In my kitchen, it's very simple because we created a restaurant in the middle of a forest, and we don't have a menu. We choose and we select the best products from foraging, from agriculture, from our artisanal fishing. The world is going after 20 types of crops, but there are 8,000 types of edible plants in the world. We're losing biodiversity, and of course I'm afraid. United Nations is telling us that there are 60 harvests left for us. We need to solve the problems. The solutions have to come from us. Gastronomy plays a big role in the good health of ecosystems. The more plants, the more climate-proof we are. The more resources we have, the more carbon we sequestrate, the more food we can get.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here.
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
In our money lead, the national average for a gallon of gas is now just 3 cents off the $5 a gallon mark, according to AAA. With higher inflation and interest rates, home mortgage applications dropped to the lowest level in 22 years. And for the first time since January, the number of people filing weekly unemployment claims hit 229,000, which economists were not expecting. Let's bring in CNN's Rahel Solomon. Rahel, let's start with housing. Is the housing market finally cooling down?
It does appear so, Jake. If you are looking for a house right now, you are finding it increasingly more difficult, which is probably why applications to purchase a home, mortgage applications, dropped 6.5% compared to the week prior. This plus applications to refinance essentially at 22-year lows. And two things are happening right now, Jake. You have the price of a home going up, still about 20% higher than it was a year ago. And you have the cost to buy a home, the borrowing cost also going up. Take a look at mortgage rates right now. The average for a fixed 30-year sitting at 5.23%. But look at this chart. It sort of tells it all. A year ago, it was at 3%. So you're getting hit on both sides, Jake. Not only is the price of a home going up, but the cost to borrow, to buy a home is also going up. It's becoming increasingly more affordable or less affordable for people to buy a home, especially first-time home buyers.
Well, let's turn to unemployment. Unemployment's very low, but unemployment claims rose. They're overall still considered low. What does that mean? The Fed is obviously focused on inflation right now.
Yeah, so every Thursday morning, we get these initial claims, essentially how many more Americans are filing for unemployment benefits. And the number this morning was 229,000, which is the highest we've seen since January, but still low, especially when you consider the average of these numbers over the last month. So what it means is that the jobs market is still very strong, but again, perhaps some sign of weakening. When I asked David Kelly of JP Morgan about this morning, saying, look, does this worry you? He told me still too low for concern. We also got the jobs report on Friday, which indicated the same 3.6% unemployment, still 390,000 jobs being added to the economy. But here's where it might cause some concern for the Fed as it tries to lower inflation. Jake, with the jobs market being as hot as it is, 2 open jobs for every 1 person looking for a job, that means that people who are looking for work, they can demand more in terms of wages, which is great. However, that tends to mean higher prices. Companies tend to pass that on in terms of higher prices. And the Fed, of course, is trying to lower prices. It's trying to lower inflation. So this becomes a very delicate balancing act for them as they try to lower inflation. But again, by and large, the jobs market's still very hot.
All right. Rahel Solomon breaking it all down for us. Thanks so much. Turning to the health lead now, a possible link between COVID during pregnancy and neurodevelopmental disorders in children. A new study found babies who were exposed to COVID in utero were more likely to have delayed speech or motor skills by their first birthday than babies who were not exposed. And now researchers are calling for an investigation and say more data is needed. Here to discuss, Dr. Ashish Jha. He's the White House COVID-19 response coordinator. Dr. Jha, we should note these are preliminary findings from Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. But what is your takeaway from the study?
Yeah, so Jake, first of all, thanks for having me back. Look, this is part of a broader set of data that kind of makes a compelling argument that pregnant women should get vaccinated when they are pregnant. We know that pregnancy itself is a high-risk situation if you get COVID, so the complication risk is high. And then there's more and more emerging evidence like this one that the babies themselves can have negative effects. So lots of good reasons why if you are pregnant, you should get vaccinated. It's a great way to protect yourself and the baby.
Researchers say that the developmental disorders are delays in the basic milestones of infancy, such as rolling over, reaching for objects, babbling, and that there are concerns for other potential long-term adverse health consequences. Now, we know vaccines don't stop a person from getting infected with COVID. They can just help you deal with how bad the infection is. So what more can pregnant women really do to prevent this other than getting vaccinated?
Well, so first of all, let's be clear. Vaccinated and boosted actually can prevent infections, absolutely. And even if you get infected, have much lower levels of virus. So I think that's probably the single most important thing you can do. Obviously, avoiding high-risk situations, super crowded indoor spaces in poorly ventilated places. There are those kinds of things that we know make a difference as well in reducing infections. But to me, at this point, still, this number one thing is getting vaccinated and boosted is probably the best way to protect yourself.
This reminds me, why haven't you guys, the CDC, the Biden administration, why haven't you changed the definition of fully vaccinated to include that booster shot that we all agree is necessary and needed part of the regimen? Why not change that? It seems obvious that the booster shot is vital.
Yeah. No, so first of all, I agree with you on the science here, Jake. Very clear. Every American who is vaccinated needs 3 shots to be fully protected. That's what we sort of describe as being up to date. The definitional issue of a fully vaccinated or not is very much a CDC decision. A lot of factors go into that. But from a clinical and public health point of view, people need that 3rd shot. That's what offers the best level of protection.
Today, the Biden administration laid out its COVID vaccine rollout plan for kids under 5. Vaccines for this age group might be available by the end of the month. I know a lot of parents are very happy about this, but the latest polling from April shows only 18% of parents nationally say they are going to schedule a shot for their under 5-year-old right away. How do you convince the other 80% or so to schedule that shot as soon as possible?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jake. I start off by saying 2 things. First, our job is to make sure that vaccines are widely available and easily accessible, right? That's the first step, just to make sure that happens. Second is if you go back to December of 2020 and look at the polling data on adults, about 1/3 of adults said they were going to get vaccinated right away. About 80% have ended up getting a single shot. So my point on that is vaccine confidence builds over time. We're going to work with pediatricians, family physicians, faith groups, helping people answer questions they have and making sure that parents understand that the best way to protect their children is getting vaccinated. We don't expect this to happen overnight, but we do expect in the weeks and months ahead we're going to see a lot more kids get vaccinated.
According to the CDC, the 5 to 11 age group has right now the lowest rates of vaccination. 29% of kids in that age group completed the 2-dose vaccination series compared to 59% of 12 to 17-year-olds or 63% of 18 to 24-year-olds. Isn't it fair to say that this administration, as of right now, has failed to convince America's parents to get their youngest kids vaccinated? What's going to make this new age group, 6 months to 5 years, any different?
Yeah, so Jake, I think the key point here is vaccine confidence builds over time. 12 to 17-year-olds have been eligible longer, and we've seen vaccination rates rising. Even today, there are hundreds, about thousands of 5 to 11-year-olds going out, getting vaccinated. That's happening every day. We're continuing to focus on getting good information out to people that parents trust, doctors, nurses, religious leaders, and also obviously making sure that it's extremely convenient and easy. We think this is a long game, and we think over the long run, that strategy is what's going to help override a lot of the misinformation out there and make parents comfortable knowing that this is the right thing to do for their kids.
The CDC says more than 82 million doses of vaccines distributed across the country have gone to waste since the start of the pandemic. Do you worry we're going to see more of this if kids at 5 and under don't get vaccinated during this big White House push?
Look, the bottom line on this is we got 700 plus million doses out, obviously 200 million people vaccinated. When you're trying to make vaccines easily accessible, widely available, you're not as, you're focused on that as your primary goal. And we're going to have some number of doses that are not going to be able to get into people's arms. We know that. That's a part of the cost of doing business here. Our focus is really on making sure availability and accessibility come first. And with that, we think it's going to be the right way to prioritize making sure kids and adults get access to this vaccine.
All right, Dr. Ashish Jha, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up next, teed off. The PGA Tour takes action against big-name golfers participating in that tournament funded by the Saudis. But it's not the Saudis' record on human rights that the PGA is mad about. Stay with us.
I'm David Culver in Beijing, and this is CNN.
We share this place, we all belong. We have to restore this planet's soul. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow.
The world's biggest business stories from every corner of the globe. Marketplace Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine.
Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore CNN.com/impact. Click to take action.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. More breaking news that we are following right now. You really work as hard as you can, getting the facts. We're learning more about our alleged plot. It is critically important. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
Friday, new details on what happened inside the White House during the Capitol attack. The January 6 hearings. Live coverage starts Friday on CNN.
In the sports lead today, the PGA Tour rattling the world of golf, suspending legends such as Phil Mickelson and Sergio Garcia and Dustin Johnson because of their participation in the new Saudi-backed LIV tournament, which teed off today. And now the three major winners and more than a dozen other pro golfers are officially barred from future PGA Tour events. CNN's Alex Thomas is at the LIV tournament near London. And Alex, we should note, this is not the PGA Tour taking a moral stance against this Saudi-backed tournament because of Saudi Arabia's abysmal records on human rights or the murder of a Washington Post columnist. That's not the problem they have with this.
No, Jake, because they had previously released PGA Tour players to play in Saudi Arabia for their partner, the European DP World Tour. They're not worried about the source of the money, just how much money the Saudis have, because it could threaten their place as the most prestigious and most lucrative golf competition on the planet. PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan had a choice to make, and he chose the nuclear option. It is now open civil war at the top of the professional men's game. A seething two-page memo released as the LIV golf players shortly after they teed off here, part of which said, "I am certain our fans and partners who are surely tired of all this talk of money, money and more money will continue to be entertained and compelled by the world-class competition you display each and every week." That was aimed at the current members, the players who didn't jump ship. Almost a mafia movie-style snub to the breakaway players, almost like "you're dead to me, leave a horse's head on your pillow." The LIV Golf response was swift and direct. They said, "Today's announcement by the PGA Tour is vindictive and it deepens the divide between the Tour and its members. This certainly is not the last word on this topic. The end of free agency is beginning. That's hinting at legal action. Ultimately, LIV Golf has become the ultimate pay-as-you-play golf." And what I mean by that is you can play and then you pay by being suspended from the PGA Tour, Jake.
Alex, golf is such a mental sport. Did this PGA Tour decision apparently affect any players in the tee box in England today?
I mean, they played good golf. Phil Mickelson absolutely striped it down the first hole on his opening shot, and the crowd absolutely loved it. Lots of fans following him. I spoke to Sergio Garcia, former Masters champion, shortly after he finished, and he seemed really relaxed about it as well. He was one of those who quit the PGA Tour before playing here to avoid legal action, but it's certainly heading that way in my opinion, Jake.
All right, Alex Thomas, thanks so much. Appreciate it. In our pop culture...
Hello, I'm Isa Suarez. We're now going to leave the lead with Jake Tapper and take a deeper look at today's international stories for our viewers right around the world. We're bringing you the Global Brief in just a few minutes. We will begin with a global crisis. 47 million more people are projected to be pushed into acute food insecurity this year because of Russia's war on Ukraine. That is according to a new UN report. Food insecurity over recent years has been on a dangerous trajectory, with many other causes such as extreme weather events and COVID really vanquishing the developing world's basic needs. We will be discussing solutions as well as limitations with the Foreign Minister of Canada, one of the world's leading wheat exporters. We'll also take a look at the migrant caravan making its way to the U.S. border from Mochila, a town in southern Mexico. The caravan, made up of Venezuelan, Cuban and Central American citizens, began the trek Monday morning. They hope to reach the U.S. border. And this comes, of course, as President Joe Joe Biden is expected to unveil a new declaration on migration. And we'll take you live to Brazil as Mr. Biden gears up to meet his Brazilian counterpart, Jair Bolsonaro. It is the first time the two very different leaders have met in person, and both have, well, ulterior motives. Thailand has become the first nation in Asia to allow the growing of marijuana and the consumption of it in food and drinks. However, smoking marijuana is still illegal, and Thailand is limiting the amount